I'm in Kansas City, but you can call me KC.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Alegria in Kansas City. I'm your host, Fabian Shepard. And as you know, on this program, our goal is to inform, inspire, and educate you. Today, we plan to educate you about a business right here in Kansas City doing remarkable things. And we also hope to inspire you to follow the lead of these entrepreneurs who've been quite successful. And on top of all of that, we hope to inform you about things you may be able to do to help yourself with your computer activities and your online services. So with that, we'll turn to our guest from the Purple Guys, John Schramm.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us, John. And the Purple Guys, it sounds so fun. My wife said, "Who's on the show today?" I said, "The Purple Guys." And my kids went, "The Purple Guys," thinking it might be some caricature.
Yes.
Tell me about the Purple Guys. What is the business?
So the business is outsourced IT support, computer support for small and mid-sized businesses. We've got 270 companies here in Kansas City and 670 companies nationwide. And they range in size from a 20-person firm to a 200-person firm. And the what do? We answer the phone when something doesn't work, and then generally that something has an on-off switch and a screen, so computers, laptops, those sorts of things. As well as the security for a small business, so protecting their data, making sure it's backed up, making sure they have good antivirus, a good firewall, their end users are trained in how to use the equipment. So it's outsourced IT support for small and mid-sized businesses.
So when you tell me you have that many locations across America, I'm going to think that your bulk of your business is commercial users. Is that right?
Yeah, it is business to business IT support. That is what we do.
So no individual users whatsoever?
No residential at all.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sorry if you said that. I missed it apparently because listening skills aren't working well today. Now, this is one of those things, you started it off and it grew exponentially because it's still growing.
It is still growing.
What does it take to do that? I know we have a lot of budding entrepreneurs out there. How did you get so big?
It's one step at a time. And I will tell you, it took us 20 years to get to 40 people. And then recently, we actually had an acquisition. So we sold the majority of the company. We were acquired by a firm that already had 2 locations and had essentially another 110 employees. So the combined entity now has 150 employees and all those locations and all that support. So growing it to a size where it made sense, and again, it's a business decision. Are you growing a business to sell it? Are you growing it to hand it down to your family? Is there any other kind of plan for the future? And in our case, decided that the acquisition route was the way we wanted to go, and still moving forward myself and my wife as owners in the new business, but did combine forces with a larger firm.
And so when something like that happens, obviously it gives you more resources.
Yes.
But is it more work for you?
Right now, because we're in the transition period, yes, it's more work. And bringing together several very established entities and integrating the back ends, which is all of the computer systems that we use, some of which were similar, some which weren't, and the processes of how we approach the industry. That's a lot of work and a lot of moving parts. But for the customer side of things, we've got a bigger team, and we've got roughly 100 technology brains now that our customers can have access to. So it's really broadened the talent pool that we have, and we're actually still growing. We just recently hired 5 more people here in Kansas City and have 2 more openings.
Wow.
So absolutely looking to continue to grow here in Kansas City as a local team.
So tell me about that. You mentioned that you hired folks here.
Yeah.
We're hearing a lot during this time period that it's difficult to get good talent.
It is extremely hard. 6 months ago, well, not 6 months ago, prior to the pandemic, if we would post a job, we would get 30 to 40 applicants per job.
Yeah.
The jobs we're posting now, if we get 5 or 6, we are lucky. This is, in my opinion, the closest I've ever seen to a full employment market. And I've been doing this for 20 years in the IT space, and there's been some really booming IT times. So it is extremely hard to find both people that are in this industry and also people that are willing to take on a new endeavor.
Okay, now in speaking about you, we were talking before the show, and this is not your first entrepreneurial venture.
It is not.
You've had several others. Can you tell me about some of the things you tried or did?
So the lessons learned from my, as I call it, my unintentional serial entrepreneur career. The number one lesson is, be careful in picking your partners, and that was a lesson I had to learn twice, unfortunately. So just making sure you understand how you're going to get out of a business when you get into it. And really having that clear understanding, because you don't really know how it's going to work until you kind of start working together. And there's a saying that the only ship that doesn't float is a partnership. And I have experienced that, but I've also experienced great partnerships at the Purple Guys. I've had owners in and out, and now I have new partners, and it's been fantastic. So it can work. It's just a very delicate balance. And early on, I guess I was very naive going into it, making assumptions about the personality of the other person that did not turn out to be true.
I understand that. That's why I quit having roommates after my first try at it.
Yeah.
So your wife, Jill,
Yes.
What's her role in this? Because most of the time when I see very successful entities like this, both husband and wife they don't have competing roles. They have their separate roles. They stay in their lanes, and they both do excellent jobs.
Yeah, well, Jill and I are very much a case of opposites attract. So we are absolutely we each have our own lane, and we're very good in our own lanes. And when we cross lanes, that's when the sparks sometimes fly. The first two businesses, we were incredibly active. We co-founded them, co-ran them. Then we started having kids. And then my oldest daughter actually started traveling. She was actually a touring musician for a while. So my wife actually stepped out of the active day-to-day. So right now at Purple Guys, her primary role is to coach me and make sure I am continuing to improve. But she is a phenomenal sales driver. I'm more of an operations focus and a marketing focus. And again, when we come together as a team, it's fantastic. So I get a lot of coaching from her.
Yes, I've enjoyed meeting your wife. Yeah. Super smart gal. And
she
very
is.
Driven, so
Yes.
I can see how she would, just kind of.
Yeah.
Anybody that works with Jill would stay motivated.
Oh, absolutely, yes. She is an evangelist. That is who she is and what she does, and she's really good at it. She's incredible at connecting people.
So obviously you filled a niche, and it's pretty broad as far as the demand for this. How did you know this was going to be something that would work?
Well, to kind of walk through how I got to this particular career, so I started 2 IT staffing firms were my first 2 endeavors. And again, the businesses were phenomenally successful. Our second went from 0 to 90 employees and 0 to $10 million in 4 years from a revenue standpoint.
Pretty good.
And that was a major hockey stick growth up and to the right. It was a lot of fun. And early on, and actually not early anymore, early on in my career, I used to be technical, and I could do a lot of the technical things. My kids will attest to the fact that I can't do any of it anymore. But so early on, when we started that second staffing firm, I was doing the internal tech, so making sure we could print and that email worked and all those kind of things. And it dawned on me that, well, I'm the president of the company. I have better things I should probably be doing with my time. I was going to just hire somebody. We were an IT staffing firm, put them on staff and say, this is now your job. One of my teammates said, hey, I know somebody does this part-time. You should outsource it. So I had an IT staffing firm and actually outsourced my IT support,
Wow.
Which was fantastic. It was a two-man shop. I liked the model. And when we wound up launching this business, I bought out that company. I essentially gave them full-time employment. And it took me about a year, actually, to figure out what we did. I knew what I was buying. I was buying outsourced IT support, but from a standpoint of running the business, it took me about a year to figure out that we're actually in the customer service and customer support business, and we just happen to deal with the technology layer, which makes a difference in terms of how you hire people. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, it's not just about hiring good people with good technical skills. They gotta have the people skills.
The communication,
and the
right.
people skills and the communication are critical to what we do. Because I mean, if you think about it, primarily we are the help desk. We're the call center. We're the hopefully friendly voice on the other end of the line when something's not working. And that really, if there is a secret sauce to what allowed us to grow over the last 20 years, it's the word of mouth referrals that come from providing that excellent support. Because it is a cliche, but the people that tend to be drawn to the technology field don't always come with the warmest of personalities.
I understand.
So the Saturday Night Live skit that used to exist is real. So it was funny for a reason, because that person exists.
Well, and the fact that you exist and this business exists here in the Midwest is really encouraging, because you don't usually think of, and maybe you do, not many people think first of Kansas City or the Plains as an area for internet technology and that type of business.
There's a lot of great talent in Kansas City. I mean, some of it is here because of the larger organizations like Cerner and Sprint, which is now T-Mobile, but they attracted a lot of tech talent. There's some great universities here and great local schools that provide the talent. Centric University is a great career changer kind of a place where people can come in and get the technical skills, and we hire straight from that school. So there's a lot of good talent here.
Centric University.
Yeah, Centric, CENTRIQ.
I don't know it, but obviously people in technology know it.
Yes.
And a lot of kids are from right here in the Kansas City market?
Centric is mostly focused on continuing education and or career changers.
So
it's
these
less
are
of a
older
universal,
folks.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to learn more about Centric University, more about the Purple Guys, and more about you, John Schramm, when we come back after this break.
Why did the onion cry? I don't know. Why did the onion cry? 'Cause he cut himself. I've got one. Why was the Cyclops such a good teacher? I don't know. Why was the Cyclops such a good teacher? Because he only had one pupil.
Welcome back to Alegria in Kansas City. I'm your host, Fabian Shepard, and today we're talking with John Schramm from the Purple Guys. And before we went to break, John, you were telling us about Centric University. Yes. Now, you get many of your folks from there.
Yeah, we've hired several people from there. And what I've found is it's generally people that have had a professional career in one shape or form, and they want to get into the technology field. So you can pursue a database degree, you can pursue a technical certification in network support, which is essentially what we hire. And they've got several different technology tracks. And it's really for someone who wants to change their career and kind of get into that technology world. It's a really great program that they got. They've got lots of options.
So think about that. If you're looking for a new place to go, a new direction, turn purple.
Yes.
Become one of the Purple Guys. Now, we've talked about your entrepreneurial path. We've talked a little bit about this business and some of your former businesses. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about you. I've always wondered about entrepreneurs, the people that have that drive. They get socked in the gut and they get back up and keep going. What were you like as a student? Because I was a terrible student. And I got to figure you were a pretty good student.
I was a great student in high school. And I've always had this passion for building things. I actually made furniture for a little while when I was in college. So I like to create things. I've had a creative streak. I will tell you, and my kids should not be listening, I was actually on academic probation one semester in college. I was not nearly as stellar a student in college as I should have been. But I did learn a lot, so it was a fun time, and I would pretty much do it over. But I learned a lot, and one of the other things I told my kids, I didn't have any major financial support. I worked a 40-hour job all the way through school, got an engineering degree, graduated, went to work for Price Waterhouse at the time. It's now Price Waterhouse Coopers, but way back when I graduated,
one of the big 8 accounting firms.
It was one of the big 8, yes, And I went to work for the MIS division, which was Management Information Systems.
Okay.
That was the cool term for computer people back then. And loved it. Actually traveled kind of around the country doing projects. It's actually how I met my wife. My version of the story is she picked me up at a bar in Nashville. We did technically meet in a bar in Nashville. But it was a lot of fun, so I got a wife out of that original career. But I saw different industries from that 4 years I spent there. And again, that just kept the entrepreneurial juices flowing, because it's a consulting firm is what they do. So you see the ins and outs of a bunch of different businesses when you work on those projects. And I just had that bug. I knew I wanted to start something, and I had a couple of other different business ideas. And then, my wife and I were living in Chicago at the time, and our first proposal was to open a branch office of a company that was in Chicago, come here to Kansas City, which is where my wife grew up, so I followed a girl here. And I love Kansas City. And we were wildly successful, and again, it was wildly unsuccessful from a partnership. But that initial drive to want to start something and create something is something I've always had since I was a little kid.
So I love those stories, and particularly because you're now the third guest that we've had on this show who met a Kansas City girl and moved here, and things worked out well.
Yes.
And we had the owner of BAC Music. They are one of the last American companies still making brass instruments.
Wow.
And they've got a store out not far from your home at 148th and Metcalf. And then they have a factory in the Jazz District down 18th and Vine. And folks like Mumford & Sons and other people come here just to tour their factory, which is pretty cool. But this is a guy that met a Kansas City girl and moved here. So got some crazy little women here,
yes.
And it seems to work out. Now, where's your home?
I originally grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And,
the UP.
I had some stories that my wife did not believe, but my parents, instead of taking photographs, they took slides. So we get the slides out. I didn't wear shoes most of the time growing up as a kid. Couldn't see our nearest neighbors. If you've ever toured anywhere where there's a rural highway and every once in a while you'll see a mailbox, that was kind of my house. It was just there, middle of nowhere. Was outdoors a lot. Did a lot of hunting and fishing.
Summers in the UP.
Yeah, the summers were awesome.
Moose, you see moose up there?
There's a few moose up there now, but they've actually repopulated the moose, because the moose population was completely gone for a long time.
What about bears?
There are bears. My parents actually had a black bear in their front yard.
Oh, wow.
This winter, it climbed up onto the bird feeder and bent it over. So you're rural when a bear comes into your front yard.
Oh, I've been to the UP. I've spent some time up there. It's a lot of fun.
It is a great place. It is a beautiful area. It gets a lot of snow, so you gotta like snow if you live up there. So lots of cross-country skiing as a kid. That's one of the things I miss from my childhood.
What about snowmobiles? Did you snowmobile up
Some
there?
of my friends had snowmobiles. We never owned one.
Okay.
But cross-country skiing is by far my favorite thing that I miss, and especially spring skiing. You get snow by the foot, and by the time spring rolls around, you've got about 3.5 to 4 feet of snow on the level everywhere. It'll get up to 60 degrees during the day, and then it freezes overnight. You get up and put your cross-country skis on, and the whole world is like an ice skating rink.
Oh, I bet.
So you just go anywhere, and again, we lived out in the middle of nowhere, so I can go for miles and miles and miles, just cruising through the woods. It is a fantastic thing to do.
I've done cross-country skiing before. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, how neat. And you don't seem like a Michigander. You seem way too nice. I can say that because we're not in Michigan,
we're not in
when I say
anymore.
that.
Yes. Yeah. There's a rougher edge to what we call the trolls below the bridge. There's the Upper Peninsula, and then the Mackinac Bridge, and then everybody below the bridge.
Gotcha. And now, did you ever go to Mackinac Island?
Oh, yes. That's 3.5 hours south of where I grew up.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
You were way up.
We
you
way
were
up
Canadian.
There. Oh, yes. We're
you're just
north
Canadian.
than a lot of Canada. Yes.
All right. So now we've talked about the Purple Guys, and we'll come back to that because I want to know. You talked about hiring, and you said it's great. How did the pandemic affect your business?
So the way the pandemic affected us is we had roughly 6,000 users at the time that we were supporting when the pandemic hit, and about 10% of them were set up to work from home or work remotely anywhere. And in a matter of a couple of weeks, we had to set up the other 5,000 plus. which was a tidal wave of work. So it was very challenging. It's one of those. There's always good to have war stories in your business, and we've got a lot of great stories from that period of time. Everybody that could pitch in pitched in. We got through that tsunami of work, and on the backside of that, it actually had our phone just really started to ring because it pointed out the companies that had the capacity to handle the crisis, and it pointed out the companies that didn't. So we got a lot of calls from, hey, we're still in crisis mode, can you help? We heard good things about you. So again, the word spreads when you do a good job. So it actually allowed us to grow our business in the pandemic. And then it also shifted everybody's focus to what does it mean to be in the cloud? Because that's really what happens. When you go home, when you're working remote, you're accessing something that's not in your physical location, which is really all the cloud is. It's just something that lives somewhere else in a data center somewhere. So we wound up doing a lot of additional migrations from small businesses that used to have all their equipment inside of their four walls. We helped them move it out into the cloud so that they were really more flexible with their workforce. And that's really what's new, is the flexibility of where you have to get your work done from. It's basically from anywhere now. And it's expected that you can do it from anywhere because everybody's experienced it. So there's really no turning that back. So the workforce now it's kind of a demand, and it's almost like an employee benefit that you've got to. There's an understanding that, well, there's some percentage of my time I get to work somewhere else. The coming to an office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, for all but a very few jobs seems to be gone.
Yeah, and that's a benefit in some ways, and it's also a tremendous detriment in others. Yes. Because they can get you anywhere.
Anywhere, anytime, yes.
Did you see that email?
Always plugged in, yeah.
Now, because of the pandemic also, we saw some things like in Kansas, for instance, with the Department of Labor and the fraud.
Yeah.
Internet security is a big thing. How does your company work in that?
Yeah, the fraud that's prevalent out there, and really just the number of bad actors. I mean, they never lose a chance to capitalize on a crisis. So there was tons of fraud around stuff, anything to do with COVID, whether it was the equipment or the regulations or the guidelines. That stuff was rampant with malware. And really what malware is, and if anybody heard about the pipeline or the meat processing, they got a crypto locker attack, which means it's malware that comes in, it locks up your data, and they hold it for ransom. So it's ransomware. It comes in typically through email. It comes in typically through a bad website or a link. You click on something you shouldn't have, and all of a sudden your stuff is locked up. So we've had a huge push and a focus with our clients on training people what to look for. So there's a ton of online training options, and I would encourage anybody that's using the web, which is pretty much everybody, to go out and look for some of that. Some of it's free, some of it's paid. We manage the subscriptions for our clients. But train people on what to look for. Make sure you don't click on something bad, and if you do happen to click on it, raise your hand. Say, hey, this might have been something bad. Let's make sure it doesn't get into the network. And then there's a whole bunch of technical stuff on the back end. It runs on the firewall. There's monitoring that's 24/7. You look for things that are just not normal in a regular network that send off automated alerts. And then somebody like our team goes in and says, all right, is something really bad happening, or was that just something weird? So you want to make sure you've got that extra layer. And that's one of the things we provide for our clients. And then the last part of kind of dealing with the world as it is today, and it existed before, but it's even more critical with the number of bad actors, is having a good backup of your critical data and systems. Because when they lock up your production systems, and if you do it right, you can usually park your backup somewhere else where they can't see and get to. So if they lock up your production data, you can just restore from your backup. Now, if your backup happens to be parked next to your production data where they can see it, they're probably going to lock that up too. So again, there's a right and a wrong way to do backups. So those are the things that we manage, and it got a much higher elevation because the number of bad actors increased throughout the pandemic. I guess people were just bored, and when you're sitting around.
Yeah, it's interesting the way bad guys, when they get bored, they can utilize that time. A lot of Lex Luthors out there.
Yeah, well, a few years ago, you had to be pretty skilled and very technical to be a bad guy in the technology world. And that's not the case anymore. It is malware as a service. You can spend a couple $100, get tools, actually have access to a help desk to how to run the attack. It's a business. It's frustrating, but it really is a business. And that's one of the things that's allowed the number of bad actors to increase. It's no longer a technical skill set. It's just a willingness to want to wreak havoc and basically use blackmail to generate funds.
And it doesn't even seem like it's that much of a black market. It's almost an open market.
It's
now.
an open market. When you get hacked, they have a customer service department. There's companies in town. I'm in a business group with one of them. They got hacked. Their data was all locked up. They wound up paying a ransom, which another thing for small businesses is to have cyber liability insurance. It is not that expensive. If you've got professional liability insurance, make sure you've got cyber liability insurance bundled in with it. The insurance companies now will help negotiate with the hackers, which is a thing. You'll get the ransom, they'll start at $500,000 and they'll negotiate it down to $350,000. And again, your insurance can pay that kind of a ransom because most small businesses can't. That would put them out of business.
Yes.
And that's what happened to this company. Their original offer from the hackers was $800,000. Got the insurance company involved. They actually hire a professional negotiator. They negotiated, I think they wound up settling at $650,000, which is still
That's a lot of money.
And then they had to decrypt all their systems. They had roughly 40 computers that got encrypted. All of their servers got encrypted. So they sent them the decryption keys. They had to go each system one at a time to do them. Some of the keys didn't work. So they're like, hey, some of these don't work. So they called the helpline to the bad guys. They're like, oh, so sorry, try these. The second set of keys worked fine. And then they actually, at the end of the whole thing, wanted them to give them basically a 5-star rating for the fact that you paid the ransom and we gave you what we said we were going to, so we're good bad guys. It's nuts.
That's hard to
but
believe.
That is the world we live in right now.
And you would think that the FBI would be able to crack down more quickly, but it seems like they move quicker than law enforcement.
Move quicker, and what the cryptocurrency has done, I mean, it's the good and bad of that type of a transaction. It is opaque. You don't know where the money's going. And so it's it's a payment system that enables those kind of transactions to happen. Like you and I can go buy Bitcoin and it can go to anybody, and it's really an untraceable transaction.
Heaven's sake.
So, it's the good part of it's kind of a cool new thing, but it's also enabled an entire new market because the bad guys can now get basically legitimately paid, and that's why the insurance companies are involved now.
And this is what you're doing. You're combating that.
And we help make sure as much as possible people don't get attacked by training. We make sure they have the right defenses in place, and there's no perfect defense. So if something does eventually happen, and it does, we have a good backup, and what you want to do is just ignore the ransom, restore from backup, move on and do a little bit more training. So that is the perfect
and
scenario.
hope they don't get you again.
Yeah, and they'll try, absolutely, because they know they got in the first time.
Right.
And that's the other thing with paying the ransom. It also proves that you'll pay the ransom. So the really good bad guys say they won't hack you again, but other people know you just got hacked. So they know that there's a vulnerability there, and it puts your name on a list that it's really already on. But it's a frustrating part of the world right now, but it is one of the things we absolutely help people with, and we help them recover if it happens, and we try to keep them as safe as possible.
Well, and I'm glad you're doing a good job for them in that. With a little bit of time we have left, do you want to just look right at that camera, and what do you want to tell the audience? I mean, obviously we know about the acquisition.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's good for you. Anything else you want to share about the Purple Guys and the services?
The super exciting thing about the Purple Guys right now is we're 65 local employees. The team is here in Kansas City. We're the largest team in Kansas City providing IT support to small and mid-sized businesses, and we're continuing to grow. So if you've got friends or family that are looking for a job in the IT space, would love to talk to them. And B, if you know somebody that's a small business owner and is looking for quality IT support, we've got the largest team in Kansas City based right here. The phone rings right here. We've got a team waiting to respond. So go to purpleguys.com. All of our contact info is there.
Fantastic. And with that, we come to a close of another episode of Alegria in Kansas City. We'd like to thank our guests today, John Schramm and the Purple Guys. I'm your host, Fabian Shepard, and we remind you that Alegria in Kansas City is brought to you by Televida, a production of EXO Films.